Hello and welcome to another Digital Rebar Kubernetes demo. We've got something really excited brought to you by the RackN team, showing you really production hybrid Kubernetes made super simple in a parallel way. I'm here with Greg Althaus, our CTO, co-founder.
Hi, I'm Greg.
And he'll walk you through some of these with me, peppering him with questions as we go. And I'll let him explain the environment a little bit.
Okay, so what I've got here is I've already got a Kubernetes deployed. It's running on what we would call bare metal. In this case, we're simulating that with KVM instances, but it's the same thing from our product's perspective. I've already got the dashboard up and running. I've got a couple of namespaces set up. One's for logging. I'm using Elasticsearch, FluentD, and Kibana as a base for logging across all the containers. And then I'm also got monitoring where I'm running Prometheus inside of Kubernetes. And so we can see those as deployments there. And it's also got Grafana. It's got Grafana built on top. So I can actually go and see I got my log dashboard loaded. So I can load that up. I can see where my logs are, what's logging what, so forth.
So this is really a production grade Kubernetes deployment. Mm-hmm. You put it together. It took, what, about how long to install?
15 minutes at that.
Okay, so super simple, right? But for us, very important that it's not just fast to get Kubernetes installed, but that it's repeatable and hybrid. So can you give us a little bit of background on, on where that comes from?
Here's the other dashboards, right? We can even do performance monitoring with it. And then in some regards, we're using Digital Rebar to deploy it. And so in this case, I've got my 4 nodes. This is one of our deployment screens, and I'm calling it composite. And so I've got my 4 nodes, I've got my master node, and then I've got my 3 worker nodes right now. And then I've added these as add-ons as part of Digital Rebar. We package these things together so that you can easily add them. And I'll show you kind of what we mean by easily add. So say I wanted to run, I had a bunch of Helm charts that I had lying around that represented an application I wanted to put out there. One option is I could add Helm. Or if I was working with Deis, for example, I might choose to use them as their workflow.
Okay. So Deis is a platform as a service offering.
So in this case, I'll choose Deis. And I will then say I want to bind that. In this case, we'll launch that Deis from our admin node. So it's 87. So I'll add that. And I'll commit it. And as that goes, it'll start bringing up that. And Deis is dependent upon running in Helm. And so what we'll see is Helm got added. We're in the process of adding Helm. In fact, it's already done. So in this case, it pulled in the appropriate Linux parts for Helm, set up Helm client on the master, installed into the Kubernetes the tiller part of Helm, which is the...
So wait a sec. How did you know where to install it and where the Kubernetes cluster was? All that. There's all this stuff you have to know before you.
So that's part of our roles in Digital Rebar. It knew that for that deployment, where the master node was, where the Kubernetes kubectl aspects were, so that it could actually run and inject things into Kubernetes. All of that was sequenced through Digital Rebar, putting those in place in the right spots. Okay. So now there's Helm client running or available on the master node that you can start injecting just raw charts from. In the case of Deis, it then used, well, it was supposed to. I guess I'm maybe out of sync right now with some of the Deis stuff. Yeah, it looks like it.
Okay. This is actually helpful to see. So when there's a problem, the system's going to stop. It's going to give you some error messages. You're going to know exactly what's going on.
Oh, so we may have actually tried to run too quickly.
Oh.
So the tiller pod doesn't look like it was found. So let's retry. So it may have, our sequencing may need a little tweaking. So we'll run it again and see if we can actually see the tiller component this time.
And so this is live logs? I'm actually seeing
this is
what's
live
happening.
logs. As it's coming out, we're updating it as we go.
Wow. Okay. So I actually am going to. It failed.
Yeah. In fact,
I retried it. It looks like it's working this time. I'm getting some live data back.
Looks like I have a bug I need to fix in our Helm chart or our Helm deployment thing to actually wait for tiller to completely come up.
Okay.
Apparently, it wasn't quite all the way up, but now you can see it adding the Deis components through Helm, and now it's going to wait for the Deis components to finish.
All right.
And so, but see, I can show those too.
Okay.
So if I go to the Kubernetes dashboard, I can refresh it. I can now see that I have a Deis namespace.
Okay.
And there we go. Deis is slowly starting to come up. It's downloading its containers. It's got a lot of stuff to download, pull in, sequence, and start, but it's starting to run.
That's really simple.
And then I think it puts Tiller and the Helm components into the Kubernetes space, and so there those are.
So this is pretty cool, right? You got a Kubernetes. We sort of had one in the oven, so we jumped right to it. Let's say I wanted to create a new Kubernetes deployment, maybe Amazon or Google.
All right, so we provide what are called workload wizards or workloads. In this case, I'm going to start with Kubernetes. I'm going to create a new deployment. It's going to way to contain everything that we're running. So I'll call it AWS case, right?
So like I'm actually going to create two Kubernetes deployments, like
yeah, I'm going to
completely
create
parallel?
one and then create another one, and we'll have them both running in parallel.
Okay.
So the first, and so I'm going to choose a provider. In this case, we have a bare metal set of providers that we kind of use to do our KVM instances. In this case, we're instead of using existing nodes, we're going to go off and create them in our provider. So I'm going to select an Amazon provider, and then I'm going to say, okay, what are some of the options? I could choose a version for Kubernetes, cloud provider stuff. In this case, I'm going to choose generic because I want to handle some of the networking and other stuff. I don't necessarily want Amazon to handle it. Okay. I'm going to treat it kind of more bare metal-ish than Amazon-ish in this case.
So portable.
Portable.
Okay.
I could choose various networking plugins. In this case, I could do Calico or Flannel or Weave, but we'll just leave it. Okay. I can even name what my cluster is going to be internally. Those are kind of basic options. We also give you additional options that if you wanted to, you could change what dashboard you're trying to run, what Docker you're trying to run against. In some cases, we're even playing with Rocket, maybe looking to as an alternative to Docker.
So from a community perspective, somebody could come in, play with this stuff, and get going. From a hey, I'm going to call RackN and get help. Right. We're not going to support all this stuff. It's going to be okay.
It's kind of like what we have as defaults is kind of what we have. But the point is, you can also change your networking spaces as you need.
Right. So
and then even below that, there's a whole nother level of driving very, very small minutia.
Because this is just the wizard.
But this is just the wizard to try and help simplify. Okay. So then I'm going to get a list, and at this point I got some nodes created for me. I could add more nodes to my deployment.
Okay.
And I have a control node, which is effectively the Kubernetes master, and then a bunch of workers. And we're going to run etcd on this in our simplified wizard environment.
What about HA?
HA I could choose. I could make them HA. The system's going to say, wait, what do you need? And also go for like a simplified deployment and just make them all
3
and 3, right? All on one node, right? But in this case, we'll just kind of keep it simple for our kind of rollout.
And then you could just add more checkboxes and effectively create 100 nodes.
I'll just right there. I have another worker, right?
All right.
So now we commit it. So what Digital Rebar shows you at the end is a JSON blob that represents what Digital Rebar needs to recreate that. So if you were to just take this and inject it through our RESTful API, it would then recreate this environment. Okay?
Like a CI/CD.
Like a CI/CD environment, or if you wanted to I want to tweak it and I want to put this in with 4 nodes instead of 5 or 6 nodes, or change. I want to test version 1.4.3, right? Because in here we even specify some of those attributes so you can do overriding and stuff.
And I could change the AMIs and get different operating systems.
And change sizes of your AMIs or whatever you need.
Wow,
right?
that's pretty handy. Okay.
So then I commit and say next. It's going to automatically commit this, and now it's going to go out to use the provider that I had. Now, I didn't show you, but I created a provider that's putting all my Amazon credentials in and making that available. So it's off and doing that.
Okay.
Once this is done, we'll get a deployment in our deployments view. In fact, it's probably mostly there. It's kind of waiting for nodes to come back. And so I can see it's coming up. We've got some nodes created. We've even got our roles assigned to make that happen. It's in the process
it's
of
super
coming
clear to me which one's the controller because it has those extra roles on it.
Right. So then I'm going to say, well, at the same time, I want to test my GCE gates. So I'm going to kind of go through the same process, but this time I'll do that. In this case, I'm going to say, no, well, let's actually take advantage of being in GCE.
I could switch the networks if I really wanted to.
If I wanted to, and just keep going, right? I could set up the same path. Notice I'll end up with another similar set of options, slightly tweaked with GCE, but this time I now have my CentOS environments coming up, right? Those kind of things, my images to use, same kind of basic setup, but now specific for the cloud provider to use. And I commit, and I make it go about its business.
So at this point, we've got 3 parallel Kubernetes deployments.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay.
Started and coming up, right? So as we're cranking along, let me refresh this to show. There it is. Oh, should have waited. Caught it in the middle. So at this point, I have my 3 Kubernetes deployments. Systems are a special one that we use for discovering bare metal hardware, right? So it's not necessarily a Kubernetes deployment per se. And so as these nodes start to show up, we'll start seeing them making progress. So we already have this Amazon node up and starting to process, right?
Well, so I can see exactly what's going on with that node, where it is in
IPs
the
assigned,
process.
where it is in the process. We can get an overall view through our annealer view, kind of see all the work that's left to do, the things in progress, right? So I have nodes booting up, we're getting SSH keys in place in this case with our reader access node rules. And so all that's going to make progress, and so I can go, let's see if I have
And this is running on the server. It's not on your desktop, so it's not like I'm tracking 3 things in different directories.
yeah, so I have
an
a Digital Rebar admin node running on one of the systems, and it's actually managing all the various deployments. So where my KVM instances are, that's where my admin node is right now, but it's also talking out to deal with the cloud at the same time.
Makes a lot of sense. And the things you're showing me, these are UI items, but some of you could just do the same thing from an API or a CLI.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we have our, make sure I have this, probably failed miserably. Yeah. Just set my default passwords. And we have to set up our endpoint to get to the right one so that if we can manage these remotely. So that's using our CLI, right?
Okay.
It's a Go-based program. It'll run from any Linux system, and we actually have for Mac and Windows too.
Okay.
So you could manage a Rebar environment from any system, and that provides a front end, a CLI-based front end to our RESTful API, right? So everything's kind of built around that.
So there's a ton of stuff going on behind the scenes. How do people sort of peek behind what's going on? How do they troubleshoot, right? Because Kubernetes, it's not that hard to set up. Not crazy bad, but there's a lot of stuff going on. How do you know what's happening at any one time with this?
So I could type my password.
As I stop distracting you with questions.
So did I get it right that time? Yes. So like this is our Amazon view, right? You're probably used to it, seeing your EC2 instances, and we apparently have quite a few running out there today. I bet you have one running,
Maybe.
but mine are named AWS K8s. I have a controller and my workers, and they're in progress, right? So what's going on? So I can go and see the nodes are actually running through their inventories. If I go back to our deployment view, I can see kind of what was in process. We showed kind of a live running version,
Okay.
and we even saw a case where it errored out, right?
Mhm.
And we could then retry
I
it.
recovered it. Yeah.
And then in the case of like stuff that's already been run successfully, I can go and look and see what ran. So like, for example, on the master node, I can see what all was done. We use Ansible.
Yeah, that's just Ansible.
Yeah, we're just using Ansible to bring these up. And so in this case, it's running an Ansible playbook that's laying down various components, making sure the security certificate files are in place across the nodes. It's making sure that the containers that we use, the playbook we use is the open source Kargo based. We support it, and they're making sure that it's container based install, and so they're making sure containers are downloaded. We're sequencing those. We'll inject proxies and other stuff, environments that have proxies are needed. We'll also do like interface and IP matching. So if you were actually using Digital Rebar's features for networking and other stuff like that, we would make sure those were aligned and injected appropriately.
That's the bare metal pieces, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're taking things that the community is working on, and then we're making it really simple. Like we're packaging it up so that you don't have to worry about the NICs and the interface of the IPs or BIOS configuration.
Or like since it's an Ansible playbook, you'd have to build an inventory file, go through and figure out what all your IPs were and host names were and stuff like that. Digital Rebar is managing that for you and automatically building manifests and stuff like
So
that.
the thing that you just showed, where you click through that wizard, it created that JSON template that says, "Oh, go build all this stuff." You didn't have to worry about inventories. You didn't have to worry about
Correct.
naming. It's all just taken care of for you.
Right.
And then if I add nodes in, it knows how to add in.
So one of the things we can do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to create a new KVM instance. And that'll take a minute to boot up. And we'll eventually see it. So in our product, we can actually get a whole set of node view, right? So from Digital Rebar's perspective, it's both nodes and physical, bare metal, in this case KVM instances, also our cloud instances, and you can kind of tell by what provider's providing it.
So that's truly hybrid. It's a mix of infrastructures on one screen. Okay.
Correct. So eventually we should see a new node pop up here. Maybe. Let's see.
System's busy
Yeah.
doing a lot of stuff.
And it would be a metal under our metal provider. And so once we do that, we should be able to add it to the deployment that we want.
Okay.
As part of that, it'll then, since it's bare metal, we'll choose to make it assign an OS to it. The OS gets applied, and we'll go through the rest of the sequencing.
Okay.
In this case, it's part. It'll join the cluster, and it'll make sure that the credentials and other stuff. So, like, here's our node coming up. It's being discovered. It goes through a discovery sequence. Since it's bare metal, so we're profiling it. We're figuring out what.
And we've got some videos.
There's videos for that.
Yeah.
Right. But I should,
So
but I should let
the
that
node's
finish.
not even built yet. But
Yeah, it's not finished. I'm going to let it finish through the discovery process so that we make sure we have all the information about it before I move it. But
so the same thing would be true though if we went to expand an Amazon cluster or
Correct.
a Google cluster or something like that.
I could go through the same set of sequences, and for Amazon, it's easier instead of having to passively discover something, which is what we're kind of doing. I could actively create through our node create setup. Once I move it there. So I'll move it to the new deployment, or not new deployment, an existing deployment. And then I can come back over here. See it making its progress through the sequence. In this case, I need to make the deployment proposed again, indicating I'm going to make some changes.
We have some videos explaining this.
Yeah,
This part of the process
too.
too. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I need to find my K8's worker option, and I add that role to the node.
Oh, you can see it right on the screen that it's done.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then if I commit it, when this refreshes, we'll also see that it picks up these following sets of roles,
Okay.
indicating that it needs an OS installed on it because it doesn't have one yet. And so now it's going to go through a whole sequence of installing an OS, going through the process, and then it'll add itself as a worker. And
So this would be like I just got a new machine, unboxed it, plugged it into the network, the system discovered it, and then we said, oh yeah, we know which we want you to be, go.
Mhm.
And then it's as soon as it's ready, it'll join this Kubernetes cluster, and if we were monitoring kubectl, we'd be able
Yep.
to actually get a
Thanks.
list of when the system came up online. It's going to take a couple of minutes.
yeah, it's going to take minutes, but
The point is, it doesn't take us any time.
no, right. And so at this point, I have my kubectl. In fact, you get my helper note saying that my KVM instance is rebooting, and so now it's going through its install sequence, right? So we've already discovered it. We're now going through an install sequence. You can see it's already off installing. And then as it comes up, we'll be able to see a sequence there.
That's really cool. And then any downstream things we add, it's going to be, they're going to wait until all that stuff is done. So I don't have to build timer loops or anything like that. The system just orchestrates. This dependency waits until
Yeah, and
that
so
stuff is
one of the
done.
examples of that is I'm on the deployments page. So if I close some of these views, my Amazon nodes are slowly making progress, right? So right now they're all booted up, and because of the sequencing requirement, you have to have an etcd cluster before you can go off and build the rest of it. So it's making sure an etcd cluster's up before it actually goes to the rest, and we can see that making progress. But if I wanted to, I could say, well, I know I'm going to want logging in this already, this deployment. I don't.
Makes sense. Yeah,
I-
you're gonna
I'm gonna want to
pieces
have
it.
that anyway.
Sure.
Right? So I don't have to wait for that to be done. I can go through and say, okay, let me make some changes. I'm going to add my roles to this system. And kind of like you said, we already had it. So I can say, well, let me add logging. We let you choose between whether you want to use Heapster-based monitoring or Prometheus-based monitoring.
Okay.
Well, the Kubernetes community is kind of,
Okay, yeah.
all right.
Well, and this would let somebody play. So
Right.
you could
And so
do
then
both.
I have those two as options. So in here, I've got them at the bottom, and I can say, okay, well, I'll do this. And 2.172 is my master, so I'm going to put on that. And I'll just do both of them. And I'll commit it. And now they're added to the deployment, and because they're sequenced to wait for the add-ons to Kubernetes to be finished, it'll wait. So at this point, I can.
So could I have added those in the wizard as roles I wanted and just have it go?
Yeah,
right
so
from
as
start?
part of that JSON blob, there's a place to add additional roles that you want added to various types. In this case, you could have added DFK logging or Prometheus monitoring.
So if I
or
know I'm
Helm
going to
or-
want Deis, I could just add it into the
Correct.
JSON, and I'm always going to have Deis. So if I had a corporate standard where I'm like, all right, everybody, you must have these containers or these rules or these manifests or whatever added, or some health check on the system, you can just add it in.
Yep, that's right.
Now we're getting deep into rebar capabilities and territory.
Let's see, how are we doing over here?
That one's making
Not
progress.
not quite finished installing
It has
yet.
to
But,
install whole OS.
but
yeah.
so are my Amazon's making progress. It's bringing up each of the nodes now. Let's see where GCE is.
And we didn't pause GC. It might have actually caught up and gone faster.
I can open it. There we go. Let's see.
Yep.
Yeah, in fact, it thinks it's almost
It's
done.
almost done.
So if I go over, refresh this and see what happens.
So video's getting long. Thank you for your patience with this. There's a lot of capability to show in how we're making Kubernetes easy, fast, and repeatable. I think, do we have time to is GC up enough that we can actually log into the fresh, minty fresh Kubernetes?
Maybe. Let's see where we're
It's
at.
almost
It's
there.
almost there. It's not quite though. Let's see what happens.
At least the API's up.
Yep, API's up. If I can type correctly. Yep.
Yep.
So the API's up. My guess is the dashboard isn't quite there yet.
Yeah, because it's got
But
to
it's close.
download
It's
it.
almost there. Yeah. It's
Wow.
next on its list.
Right.
Right.
So during the demo, we were actually able to bring up at least one more. It looks like two more
Almost two
Kubernetes
more, yeah.
clusters. This is really huge, right? It's very straightforward to get these clusters up, but more importantly, it doesn't matter whether you're doing Google or Amazon, which networking topologies you pick. It's really, the power is back in the user's hands and the operator's hands about getting this stuff installed. We take out all the learning curve around how to use something like Kargo. It's going to just fall together. And when you have issues, RackN's there to help you actually make sure everything's going right, figure out your networking, pieces like that. Fortunately, we can't make Docker Hub download it any faster than it's.
Yeah, that one's just going to take a little while.
So we appreciate your time. We hope this has been informative. Please get in touch with us. RackN.com is the simple way to get in touch with us. And of course, Digital Rebar is the open source project that back ends a lot of these types of demos and that we offer support and consulting around.
Thanks.